Shalom, everyone, and happy Friday. On this Friday, February 7th, 2025. Things are going by fast. Time is going by fast. So many things are happening, but it's all for our good, and we are close to being home. That's all I have to say with the introduction. Welcome to Exploring the Motherland, African News with Garth. I'm your host. The purpose of this show is to promote the mission of Quest to Unite Africa. If you haven't been here and would like to know what the mission of Quest to Unite Africa is, the mission of Quest to Unite Africa is to promote critical infrastructure and economic development for the benefit of the African diaspora and the African continent. We do this through our four main strategies. That would be business, medicine, technological innovation, and cultural engagement. The purpose of the show as well is to keep you up to date on current news events that are in direct correlation to our mission and shows you what the purpose of Quest to Unite Africa is and what is needed and why it's needed, So without further ado, France turns over final Sahel military base amid forced withdrawal from Chad. And I will put all the links in the chat to the articles and videos. After expelling French military, Chadian president says autonomous security is absolute priority. Achieving autonomous security was an absolute priority for Chad, President Mohamed Idriss Deby said on Friday, a day after France vacated its last military base. Au revoir. France ended its military presence in Chad on Thursday, leaving its last base in the Central African nation a day ahead of the deadline set by Chadian authorities. It's a new sunrise for a fully sovereign Chad determined to take charge of its own destiny, Deby said, pointing out that Chad must build a stronger and better equipped army to respond to security threats with efficiency.
Moving on now, it looks like France's military chapter in the Sahel region has finally come to an end. The former colonizer has handed over its last base in Chad to local authorities. In a military ceremony in the Central African country's capital city of N'Djamena, France had nearly 1,000 personnel in Chad and has now handed over the Sergeant Adjikosi Air Base near the capital city to the Chadian military. This was after it previously handed over the Abeche base in the east earlier in January and the Faelagu base in the north in December last year.
The transfer of the Kasai base today marks a new stage. It is part of the French decision to end permanent bases in Central and West Africa. This structural change is necessary to adapt to the evolution of the world and the evolution of Africa. We are reaffirming our partnerships in a dynamic Africa whose youth carries a lot of hope. We must act differently.
Welcoming the definitive and complete departure of the French forces from the country, Chad's president, Mohamed Idriss Deby says at an event organized at the base that Chad was not breaking off its relationship with France. He added that Chad was only ending the military dimension of the cooperation with Paris. Now, President Itno also said that Chad must build a stronger and better equipped army, and further noted that Chad must forge new alliances based on mutual respect. Now, the handover of the last military base comes just 2 months after the former French colony in Central Africa abruptly broke off its defense cooperation agreement with Paris, forcing France to begin pulling back its troops from the country. The Central African country had given Paris until the 31st of January to withdraw from its territory. To give some context, Chad was a key link in France's military presence in Africa. It was one of the last countries in which Paris had maintained a large military presence. Soldiers and fighter aircraft from the former colonizer had been stationed in Chad almost continuously since the country's independence in the 1960s, helping to train the Chadian military. However, joining the anti-France chorus in the region, Chad's president, who has been in power since 2021, said the cooperation with France had become completely obsolete in light of the political and geostrategic realities.
Building on 66 years of progress since the proclamation of the Republic, Chad is fully entitled, and even obligated, to freely define its international relations, choose the forms of cooperation it desires, and conduct its defense policy according to its priorities. We have therefore decided to terminate this military cooperation to refocus our partnership with France on areas that will have a more positive impact on the daily lives of our respective populations.
Now, at its height, France's Sahel contingent had numbered more than 5,000 troops as a part of the anti-jihadist operation Barkhane, which ended in November of 2022. But now more than 70% of the continent has thrown France and its troops out. This is primarily due to resentment from perceived French interference in their countries. France is being kicked out by the military authorities in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, following years of fighting Islamic extremists alongside the regional troops. The West African juntas have pivoted toward Russia in recent years, which has been militarily backing them. Now, additionally, Senegal and the Ivory Coast have also begun negotiating the withdrawal of French forces from their territories. Now, this has left France with troops only in Djibouti and Gabon, and reports suggest that the base in Djibouti, which hosts 1,500 troops, would soon be used as a launching pad for future missions in Africa following the forced withdrawal from the Sahel. But as France's military
2 months after Chad severed its defence agreements with Paris, the French army has handed over its last military base in the country. Though it was Chad who announced the end of the defence pact, the head of the French Armed Forces Africa Command stated the handover was partly France's decision.
Le transfert de la base Conseil aujourd'hui marque une nouvelle étape.
The transfer of the Kasai base today marks a new stage. It is part of the French decision to end permanent military bases in Central and West Africa. This structural change is necessary to adapt to the evolution of the world and the evolution of Africa. We are reaffirming our partnership in a dynamic Africa whose youth carries a lot of hope. We must act differently.
Nous devons agir différemment et autrement.
Okay, that video is just basically a shorter summary of what she said. And basically, Chad is following up on their promise to get rid of French military and start their own security partnerships. Basically, that's what we're here to do in Quest Unite Africa, to create strategic partnerships that benefit our brothers and sisters on the continent and our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. Chad should seek partnerships with other African nations, such as the AES, to keep their borders secure. AES has already AES is the Alliance of Sahel States, if you don't know, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. They have created a security pact, a security initiative of them building a joint military force with 5,000 troops, where at any time they will combat any conflict borders, which is smart and is going to help them stabilize the region. And once you stabilize the region, you're able to further develop your infrastructure and economy, because that was the problem. These nations in the West, like France, were purposely colluding their political process and colluding everything else in their country, so they were unable to, progress until they got rid of the French and all the other foreign entities that were obviously combating their progress. So this is a promising news development, and in my opinion, Chad is one step closer to joining the Alliance of Sahel states, or they need to, foster a relationship with the Alliance of Sahel states to further combat the jihadism in those areas, and that will make them stronger, and it will basically start creating a new West Africa, for lack of a better term, one that can secure its own borders, and it could, has its right to sovereignty, doesn't need any foreign entity telling them what to do, and they have their sovereignty. All right, in the next story, and the highlight, Musk and Trump move to shut down USAID. Oh my gosh, this is going to backfire. Basically, that's why I named the episode Biting the Hand That Feeds You. Staffers at the U.S. Agency for International Development has instructed to stay out of agency's Washington headquarters after billionaire Elon Musk, I know this sounds so ridiculous, announced that Donald Trump had agreed with him to shut the agency down. Musk, Trump, and some Republican lawmakers have increasingly targeted the U.S. Aid and Development Agency, which oversees humanitarian development and security programs in over 120 countries. They have accused it of promoting liberal causes. Yeah, sure. They just are broke, and they can no longer fund these initiatives. And they can't be forthcoming about it. They're being aggressive and combative about it instead of being forthcoming and readjusting their strategy.
Staffers at the U.S. Agency for International Development have been instructed to stay out of the agency's Washington headquarters after billionaire Elon Musk announced that Donald Trump had agreed with him to shut the agency down. This is according to a notice distributed to staff early Monday. Musk, Trump, and some Republican lawmakers have increasingly targeted the U.S. Aid and Development Agency, which oversees humanitarian, development, and security programs in over 120 countries. They've accused it of promoting liberal causes. USAID staffers say that approximately 600 employees were locked out of the agency's computer systems overnight. Those still able to access the system received emails stating that the headquarters building would be closed to agency personnel on Monday, the 3rd of February. Democratic lawmakers have protested these developments, arguing that Trump lacks the constitutional authority to shut down USAID without congressional approval.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The future of USAID, that's the U.S. Agency for International Development, is uncertain after Elon Musk said President Trump has agreed to shut it down. After a dramatic spat with the USAID senior officials and workers played out over the weekend, early this morning, Musk went on X, the social media platform he owns, and claimed the agency is, quote, beyond repair.
And USAID is a bowl of worms. Mm-hmm. There is no apple. And when there is no apple, you've just got to basically get rid of the whole thing.
USAID's website has been down since Saturday. Workers have been instructed not to come to work at the agency's headquarters in Washington, D.C. It's closed today. Hundreds of workers have been reportedly locked out of USAID's computer systems overnight, with dozens more put on leave. This includes the two top USAID security officials who were placed on administrative leave on Saturday night after they blocked members of Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, from accessing USAID's classified systems, including personnel files and information about contracts, for example, with Musk's rivals. Since then, 4 members of DOGE have reportedly been granted access to the agency's systems now that the security officials are out of the way. Meanwhile, last week, Reuters reported hundreds of USAID contractors were put on unpaid leave. Some were being terminated after Trump imposed a sweeping freeze on U.S. foreign aid. On Sunday, Elon Musk posted a series of comments on X attacking USAID. He wrote, quote, USAID was a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. He also said, quote, USAID.
Mind you, this clown isn't even American, and he shouldn't even really have a say in American politics. This is obviously an overbreaching display of authority within this administration, and it's just signifies their downfall. I mean, I don't know what else to say. As you see Africa rising, you see the West plummeting, especially America now, with all these new measures and policies, and using political ideology as a reason or basis is just duplicitous and, just typical.
Is a criminal organization. Time for it to die. And quote, did you know that USAID, using your tax dollars, funded bioweapon research, including COVID-19, that killed millions of people? Unquote. President Trump weighed in Sunday night.
It's been run by a bunch of radical lunatics, and we're getting them out. USAID, run by radical lunatics.
I mean, isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? I mean, he's literally just, you know what? Let me just keep on going. I could go on about this nonsense that's going on. This is some crazy political theater. I hope everyone has their popcorn. Get your popcorn, extra butter, And
we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
Doctors Without Borders has warned the dismantling of USAID, the U.S. humanitarian aid system, quote, will cause an unmitigated humanitarian disaster affecting millions of the world's most vulnerable people, unquote. Congressional Democrats also raised alarm over Musk's move to access classified material at USAID. New York Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wrote on social media, quote, this is a 5-alarm fire. The people elected Donald Trump to be president, not Elon Musk. Having an unelected billionaire with his own foreign debts and motives raiding U.S. classified information is a grave threat to national security. This should not be a partisan issue, AOC wrote. USAID was established by President John F. Kennedy in 1961. For more, we go to Jeremy Konyndyk, president of Refugees International. He previously worked in several senior positions at USAID. He was most recently USAID's lead official for COVID-19 in the Biden administration. Thanks so much for being with us, Jeremy. Respond to what has taken place as late as just in the last few hours when the workers at the headquarters of USAID were told to stay home, the office closed.
So over the weekend, we have seen a concerted campaign of disinformation about what USAID is, about what USAID does. A total mischaracterization really doesn't cover it. It is outright disinformation. You heard it from Elon Musk in the clips that you played earlier. It bears no relation whatsoever to the reality of what USAID's work has been for 60 plus years. USAID does development and relief programs around the world. It has helped to save 25 million lives from HIV. It has responded to famines and earthquakes. That was the work that I did in part while I was there during the Obama years. It has promoted democracy. What we are seeing instead are these attacks against it as a sort of corrupt and illegal organization by people who know nothing about it. They are manufacturing these things out of whole cloth, and you have to ask, well, why are they doing this and why are they targeting USAID? Because the stakes here are not just that we lose what USAID has done for American values and interests and has done for the world. What we are losing here is the integrity, really, of the federal government. If they can do this to an independent federal agency that is mandated by Congress, they can really do it anywhere.
So explain the battle that took place this weekend that led the two top security folks at USAID to be put on leave on Saturday night, and also the kind of information that now that they're removed, Elon Musk, what kind of security clearance does he have? What kind of conflict of interest investigation has been done of him? Background checks to get classified access. And is it true that he's getting information about contracts of his rivals?
So I have not seen any reporting that suggests that Elon Musk has a valid security clearance. Particularly to access the systems that it seems like they were trying to access, which were tapped into the highest level national security networks that the U.S. government has. USAID is a national security agency. It's it conducts foreign policy work, and as such, in its what are called SCIFs, those are the rooms where special compartmentalized information can be stored. It has a couple of SCIFs, as all the national security organizations do, and most staff at USAID rarely go in there and never need to consume that information. When I was working on COVID, I barely went in that room, but it exists. It's there for some of the programs that need it. And Elon, through that, if he has access to that, if his minions on this Doge group of 20-somethings have access to that, that is some of the most sensitive national security information that the U.S. government possesses. None of them, as far as I have heard, have a valid clearance for that. And I think what you saw or what reported of the two security staff is that they tried, as they are legally required to do, they tried to block people without a valid clearance from breaching classified information. And for that, they were pushed out of the agency. And reportedly, the Trump-appointed chief of staff, who had just arrived, also resigned over this. So, I mean, that should be a huge, huge, huge alarm bell. In terms of specific contract information, I'm not sure what rivals he might be looking for. I don't get the sense he's looking for a competitive edge here or something. I think he is just looking to destroy this agency, because if they can destroy this agency without any consultation with Congress, without any public disclosure of what they're doing, without even an executive order giving them fig leaf from the president to do this, if a private citizen can just go in and destroy a federal agency, then we are in a dire, dire place as a government and as a country.
Africa CDC Director General Dr. Jean Kasaya explained the scale of the aid Africa receives from the U.S. and the possible effects of the pause. He was speaking on CNN last week.
In 2024, we got $8 billion of support from the U.S. to African continent, and 73% went to the health sector.
Don't worry, I'm gonna bring it all home. It's going, this aid, I believe, in my opinion, it's a crutch, and Africa needs to, cut off its dependency on aid from the West and start creating initiatives and start creating different partnerships with other African countries to start that, helping fund whatever humanitarian causes or NGOs that they have, because it's obviously clear that Trump is going to war with a trade war, an ideology war. You could basically a war on all fronts with these policies that he's putting in. But let me continue with the video.
It means today the US is the main partner that we have, bilaterally and also multilaterally, through a number of organs and organizations. what we see as a trend today in Africa, it's not just the pause from the US government, but it's also the reduction from assistance from other Western countries. And that one is a major threat to not only Africa, but to the world. And as Africa CDC is projecting with this trend to have around 2 to 4 million additional deaths annually. And
what this brother needs to understand that the West does not have the money or the clout to help them anymore. I don't know where he stands on this, but he has to understand that there is not American homogeny is over with, and it's a multipolar system, and this is the time for the African brothers and sisters, for lack of a better term, African nations to start doing the same, cutting off resources, minerals, and only doing partnerships with people who want to benefit them, not people who are basically holding aid over their head to just have influence in their country, because that's what it's all been for. That's what it's been for the past 400 years.
That one will also increase the likelihood occurrence of pandemics.
The former head of global health at USAID, Dr. Atul Gawande, also posted on social media Saturday, quote, "I oversaw global health programs at USAID. They reached hundreds of millions of people, added 6 extra years to the lifespan of children in partner countries, and we're eradicating health threats worldwide. What insanity and cruelty to break that," he said. And then you have one of the last hospitals in central Gaza being closed down this weekend because they lost their USAID funding. This at a time when the U.S. government, Trump, has approved 2,000-pound bombs being sent to Israel when it comes.
Okay, that's the part of the video we cut off. But that Democracy Now! Is one of the few least biased news channels, and I'm pretty sure they're NPR, or that I believe they're NPR as well. Basically, they're I think you could get them on your local channel or not, but anywho, let me get to the relevant point of this article and why it relates to Africa. America is no longer funding these initiatives under the guise of not aligning with leadership's current ideologies. However, I believe that America no longer has the money to fund these initiatives. Furthermore, as it pertains to Africa, this policy hurts their relations. I'm talking about America. This policy of cutting the USAID is going to hurt America's standing with other countries, their diplomatic efforts, and good luck trying to get any minerals or strategic minerals or resources while this administration is becoming very bellicose with its effort to cut off different nations and try to have this American supremacy, which is no longer relevant or no longer feasible. South Africa rejects Trump's accusations, hits back at land law aid threats. Okay, this was pretty much another ridiculous notion that he based the premise on, singling out at South Africa. Just bear with me. I will find this article. Where did I put it? Okay. South Africa is currently under threat as plans to terminate all further aid due to the country, which could affect approximately $450 million in assistance to South Africa. disrupting vital programs including HIV/AIDS education supported by PEPFAR, and impacting dozens of NGOs. If Trump lives up to his promise, here are some of the programs that will be affected according to the Health Policy Watch. Some NGOs heavily reliant on U.S. funding include WIT's Reproductive Health and HIV Institute and have been affected, with some initiatives facing immediate funding halts. It stated the suspension of PEPFAR funding worth $332.6 million alone in 2024 had helped assist the treatment of at least 5.9 million South Africans. South Africa has refuted that it's confiscating land unfairly, an accusation that United States President Donald Trump made, adding he plans to cut all funding to the country because basically what South Africa is doing, they have a law or an initiative to help promote, equal opportunity, and due to apartheid, of course this administration is going to be an opponent to that because they are claiming that it's unfair to the white South Africans that this land is being appropriated, but this is that's needed to be done after apartheid and all the stuff that the West has done to South Africa and has made an economic imbalance, and obviously health in South Africa and all this other stuff has been affected by neocolonialism. So it's kind of just disingenuous. Again, this is just all a ploy to continue Western American supremacy, and it's failing. And these videos will speak further about the land bill and why it's vital.
And it seems it's not just ISIS that is on the US president's target list in Africa. President Donald Trump has announced that he is cutting all future funding to South Africa as the country is confiscating land and treating certain classes very badly. Trump made the announcement on his social media platform Truth Social. He said South Africa is conducting a massive human rights violation. He later also spoke on the matter and said that the Ramaphosa government is in fact doing far worse and that his administration is carrying out a probe. Until that, all future funding to South Africa will be suspended.
Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things, horrible things. So that's under investigation right now. We'll make a determination. And until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing, they're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has responded and denied the accusations of confiscations. He says he wants to engage with Trump over the aid suspension. Meanwhile, his mineral minister wants to retaliate. He says if Trump could use aid cuts to threaten South African economy, Pretoria could withhold vital minerals to Washington.
You passed an Exploration Act, therefore Trump would withhold funding to South Africa. And I said, let's not mobilize Africa. Let's withhold minerals to US. That is it. If they don't give us money, let's not give them minerals. But the reality, they take our minerals, but say we're withdrawing funding. No, we have minerals in the continent. And therefore we have something that we have. We're not just beggars, but we must just use that endowment for our benefit as a continent. But if as a continent, we are frightened, we fear everything, we are going to collapse and will collapse with minerals at our doorstep.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa last month signed a bill into law that allows the government, under certain circumstances, to seize land without any compensation. Even after 30 years of the end of apartheid, the black majority owns a little land in South Africa. Now, some reports say around 70% of the land in the country is owned by the minority white community. Pretoria argues the bill does not allow the government to expropriate property by force, but that has not convinced the critics.
Isn't that ironic? You know, they literally went in there, stole everything, and now they're crying that it's a human rights violation and against their rights when they've took everything by force. And, you know, it's just, this is a changing of the guards, you know. They literally are just throwing at anything they can to stoke all this divisiveness. And obviously he is, you know, speaking to his audience, and he's, you know, charging them up with propaganda and misinformation that will be their undoing.
Even members of the government coalition have raised objections. This includes the second largest party, the Democratic Alliance, who joined hands with Ramaphosa's African National Congress last year, after the ANC lost its parliamentary majority for the first time in 3 decades. Now, the party has declared a dispute within the government over the land seizure law and has even asked to reset ties. The DA's objections have reached all the way to President Trump's ears. The land reforms have put crucial US funding to South Africa in jeopardy. In 2023, the United States committed nearly $440 million in assistance to South Africa. South Africa is also the biggest beneficiary of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, which allows African exports to the United States without any tariffs or duties. The agreement is set to expire in September this year, and there are doubts if Trump will renew it. Earlier, Ramaphosa had expressed confidence in the nation's relationship with Trump. He said that he had spoken to Trump after his election win and looked forward to working with his administration. He also said he is not worried about the relationship with Washington under Trump. But now it seems there is need to worry. Analysts had already predicted the Trump trouble for Ramaphosa over his growing ties with Russia, Iran, and his stance on Israel. But land seizure law seems to have hurt Trump the most. Many in South Africa also had not expected the abrupt halt to foreign aid from the world's largest donor. That stops money flowing for wide-ranging projects.
NGOs that are funded by PEPFAR cannot operate without this funding. So the first question that needs to be asked, and that many people in the sector who are involved in HIV work in one way or the other are asking themselves, what's going to happen?
The world should worry about the ascension of Trump. Do you think, look at what is done, WHO, how can America withdraw from WHO? The only thing he thinks about is the money they put in there, but not the benefits that accrues and the goodwill that accrues to America through that little thing. The world is in trouble.
While the US-South Africa ties are likely to deteriorate under Trump, it also brings the Elon Musk question into the equation. Trump's close ally and the world's richest man, Elon Musk, was born in South Africa. Many saw it as a golden opportunity for the country to strengthen partnership with the US. The SpaceX and Tesla CEO is reportedly in discussions with South Africa over a potential agreement that could bring Starlink satellite internet services to the country. However, Trump's move could be a hurdle. Now, Elon Musk has slammed Ramaphosa for his land ownership reforms. In the past, he also criticized Ramaphosa government for the perceived threats to white farmers. So, how South Africa navigates the Donald Trump and Elon Musk duo for the next 4 years? We will keep bringing you updates on this story.
We're calling the show Vantage. We hope you like what we put.
Okay, so You heard my South African brother. He said, "Hey, if you want to cut our funding, we'll cut our, innumerable resources that has real wealth, and we'll just cut you off, and you will be starving." And as I said before, Trump intervening and critiquing this bill is a misstep. Furthermore, he is isolating America from African trade and partnerships. This will be detrimental to America's economy and diplomatic relations on the continent. South Africa is a sovereign nation, a sovereign country, that can make laws that address economic inequalities due to past racial discrimination and segregation. Although South Africa will lose out on funding, this is an opportunity for them to make strategic partnerships with African nations. In addition, this is an opportunity for Q2A to help create initiatives to help benefit South Africa's medical sector and public health. And just my opinion, we need to get rid of all this bureaucracy, because a lot of the bureaucracy and all these NGOs, these are all implemented by the West to have influence on the continent. Just saying.
And we start with this story. U.S. President Donald Trump says that South Africa's leadership is doing some terrible things after threatening to cut off all future funding to South Africa over its land expropriation policies. Now, in a post on his media platform, Truth Social, Trump said that South Africa was confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. Now, he also called it a massive human rights violation and warned that the United States would not stand for it.
Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things. It's horrible things. So that's under investigation right now. We'll make a determination. And until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing, they're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that.
Now, for more on this, we speak to our U.S. correspondent, Sherwin Bryce Pease, who joins us virtually from New York. Sherwin, good morning. South Africa now in the sights of President Trump. He's accused South Africa of human rights violations in the context of expropriation of land and also threatening all future funding until an investigation establishes the facts. For us sitting here in South Africa, it sounds a bit incredulous.
Welcome to the Trump vortex, Sakina. Essentially, South Africa shouldn't feel too special by being mentioned here in a Truth Social post because you are in very good company. Ask the Canadians, ask the Mexicans, ask the Panamanians, ask the European Union. I mean, you mentioned a country where the foe or friend of the United States, Donald Trump, is fighting tough since his inauguration. And South Africa now has been castigated in this Truth Social post. And of course, the subsequent remarks that he's made on television. South Africa is confiscating land, he says, and treating certain classes of people very badly. It's a bad situation that the radical left media doesn't even want to mention. Massive human rights violation. At a minimum, it's happening for all to see. The United States won't stand for it. We will act. Also, I will be cutting all future funding to South Africa until a full investigation of the situation is completed. And remember, Sakina, this kind of language comes in a broader context in terms of Republican members of the House of Representatives and the Senate that have identified South Africa. They have South Africa in their sights. There was legislation passed in the last Congress seeking to review the bilateral relationship between the United States and South Africa based on certain South African foreign policy positions, in particular Russia, in particular Israel, the relationship with Israel as it pertains to the Palestinian cause, the war in Gaza, the efforts at the ICJ. So, very much a concern right now is to watch the RAND, watch how the RAND responds here, but also additional pressure in terms of the broader picture stuff, in terms of South Africa's readmission into AGOA, which is up for a renewal in October or September this year. So there is a lot at play. And don't forget, we recently spoke to South Africa's ambassador to Washington, Ibrahim Ibrahim Rasool, and he conceded, Sakina, that this was one of the most difficult assignments that he's taken on behalf of South Africa in his career. And this, I think, this post from Donald Trump today and the subsequent remarks very much speak to what the ambassador was saying in that conversation.
So, Sherwin, what does this mean practically? Given what Donald Trump has said, does this mean that the funding, for example, is immediately stopped, or is this just a signal of what is to come?
What we know in terms of what happens in moments like this is that there's a lot of confusion. And so a number of these aides and, the people that have to go and implement these things now need to find out what he meant, what was the catalytic moment for, why South Africa now. And so I think there are a lot of people behind the scenes now seeking to get a better understanding of this. I've already texted South Africa's ambassador to say, is there some early reaction here? But I'm sure DIRCO is still digesting this information. I'm sure they weren't expecting to be starting their Monday this way. So I think there'll be a few hours or a few days to really, come to terms with what the president meant here and whether it will, of course, implement policy moving forward, right? We saw the suspension through executive order of all foreign aid. And then, of course, it had implications for humanitarian organizations, healthcare organizations in South Africa in relation to PEPFAR and the distribution of ARVs. And we saw them provide a waiver for that. So would it be something like that? I will tell you this, in 2018, when Donald Trump was last president, Sakina, he also tweeted August 22nd, 2018, I've asked my Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to closely study South Africa, the land and farm seizures and expropriations, and the large-scale killing of farmers. Quote, South African government is now seizing land from white farmers. He obviously had just watched something on Fox News and tweeted about it, and not very much came from that. So that was that's our early example. Let's see how this plays out. But Donald Trump is fighting with everybody. South Africa is certainly not unique in that regard.
Sure, and thanks so much. And before I let you go, Wouter Kellerman, we just got news. In fact, you just alerted us to his Grammy win there.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was planning to spend my Sunday evening, or chart album.
And then just before I let you go, of course, Elon Musk and, his influence on what is currently happening with the new Trump administration and that sort of impact on South Africa, Sherwin, given what we have now just heard, how much of an influence is he on how South Africa is viewed in the US?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you have this former South African that very much has the ear of the United States president. And a week ago, he was also tweeting in relation to South Africa on the 24th of January. He retweeted a post that was referencing a graph that the Free Market Foundation from South Africa had posted. And the tweet says, it's a post on a graph showing that there are, quote, Sakina, quote, there are more race laws in place in South Africa today than there were under apartheid. On the 23rd of January, Elon Musk posted something. He was retweeting a tweet that said South African farmers are in grave danger now that the expropriation bill has been signed into law by President Ramaphosa, of course. Land can now be confiscated with no compensation if it is deemed to be for public purpose or in the public interest. South Africa steadily becomes communist. This is a tweet that Elon Musk was retweeting or reposting on X. And so it kind of gives you a sense of where Trump might have been informed about what he now knows to be true, but not necessarily true in relation to South Africa. And one imagines that Elon Musk might have had some role to play here.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much, Sherwin Bryce. Please get some.
Yeah, just the person I want to be getting my political and diplomatic strategic advice, Elon Musk. What a joke. Okay, we will move on to the next story. South African minister suggests withholding minerals after Trump aid cut. South Africa's Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Gwede Mantashe, has called on African countries to withhold mineral exports to the U.S. The comments come after Donald Trump's announced plan to cut South African aid over its land exploration policies. Let us withhold minerals to the U.S. This is a quote from him that you heard earlier. Let us withhold minerals to the U.S. If they don't give us money, let's not give them minerals. We are not just beggars. Let us use that endowment for our benefit. If as a continent we are paralyzed with fear, we are going to collapse, but with minerals at our doorstep. And I will put that article in the chat. You know, most of these articles are coming from RT because, you know, they're actively suppressing news going on that doesn't, you know, align with whatever political agenda or whatever facade they want to put on, again, with this American dominance, which again is what's the word I like to use? Obsolete. There you go.
Our top focus on Dispatch. The South African government has denied allegations from US President Donald Trump that it is confiscating land and mistreating certain groups of people. The government says its Expropriation Act is a legal framework designed to ensure equitable access to land. Ministers in the Ramaphosa government hit out at the White House, saying America needed them as much as they need America, and that it was time to hit back if required.
You passed an Exploration Act, and therefore Trump would withhold funding to South Africa. And I said, let's not mobilize Africa. Let's withhold minerals to US. That is it. If they don't give us money, let's not give them minerals. But the reality, they take our minerals, but say we're withdrawing funding. No, we have minerals in the continent. And therefore we have something that we have. We're not just beggars.
Describing the situation in South Africa as a massive human rights violation, US President Donald Trump had announced plans to stop all future funding to South Africa, accusing the country of land confiscation and human rights violations. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa last month signed a bill that stipulates that the government may, in certain circumstances, offer nil compensation for property it decides to expropriate in the public interest. Trump said that South Africa's leadership was hurting people's rights and carrying out atrocities.
Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things, horrible things. So that's under investigation.
They're doing very bad things, not good things, not good. The opposite of bad. I mean, no, the opposite of good, not bad, not good. You know, they're terrible. It's not fair. It's not fair.
Right now, we're making determination, and until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing, they're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that.
Land ownership is a contentious issue in South Africa, with most farmland still owned by white people more than 3 decades after the end of apartheid. Efforts to redress the inequality has attracted criticism from conservatives, including Elon Musk, who is the world's wealthiest person and was born in South Africa and is also a powerful Trump advisor. Spokesperson to the South African President, Vincent Mangwenya, has issued a clarification stating that the government has not confiscated any land. He said that the recently adopted Expropriation Act is not a confiscation instrument, but a constitutionally mandated legal procedure that ensures public access to land in an equitable and just manner as guided by the Constitution, unquote. However, the land issue has been a particular rallying point for the right. Pretoria has argued that the bill does not allow the government to expropriate property and must first seek to reach agreement with the owner. For more on this, our correspondent Calvin Ogmo has sent us this report from Johannesburg. Take a look.
South African presidency in its latest statement said that Ramaphosa is looking forward to engaging with Trump over issues of land reform policy and bilateral interests. The statement made sure to emphasize that South African government has not confiscated any land. In fact, it read that US remains a key strategic political and trade partner for South Africa. However, in a separate statement, South African Chamber of Commerce in the US has expressed concern over the possible impact on South African businesses after Trump's statement. US is Pretoria's second largest trading partner after China, with AGOA playing a crucial in facilitating trade between two economies. South Africa exported over $6.5 billion worth of goods to the US under AGOA in 2024. South Africa's continued eligibility under AGOA is critical to sustain bilateral trade, supporting thousands of jobs and fostering economic development. It said in its statement, any deterioration in relations could have widespread implications for both businesses in South Africa and America. This is Calvin Ogmo from Johannesburg, South Africa for WION World is One.
No one has to know. You know exactly, with your comment, what kind of double talk garbage is that when they have literally took Black people's farms and homes through eminent domain? I'm glad that you wow, my brain just stopped working. I'm glad that you pointed that out, because now it's being done to them and it's being reversed. It's kind of like you know, that precept, everything that they've done will be done back to them, but tenfold. All right, that's just an annotated version of what's happened with that other video. I will put that link in there as well if you want to read along, because they just put captions and quotes and things like that too. They don't really give any news reports. But yeah, I mean, the South Africa needs to realize that this is an opportunity to cut losses and start anew and start developing policies and start having some more autonomy and start doing partnerships with other African nations to help combat any health problems or financial problems that the country is facing, because the West is no longer going to help them. Not that it has helped them. I wouldn't even call it a bilateral relationship. It was unilateral. They just gave you money while they had influence in your country and had access to your minerals. That's what, again, has been happening for the past 400 years. And now, you know, the Most High is waking our people up and is showing them what has been happening. And now, you know, all America can do now is make threats. They don't have any real capital or any clout, so to speak, on, you know. I hope they understand that this is going to hurt America way more than it's going to hurt Africa. Now, to bring it all home and to end this live, you know, I believe Ghana's president gets it, and he made a powerful speech. Basically, my sentiment and my whole opinion on what Africa needs to do.
Have you ever wondered what it would take for Africa to truly stand on its own, free from the financial strings of external donors? Newly elected Ghanaian President John Dramani Mahama believes the answer lies in the African Union's financial independence. Speaking at a special African Union Heads of State meeting in Nairobi, Kenya, Mahama emphasized the urgency of reducing the African Union's reliance on external funding. He argued that such dependence compromises the organization's autonomy and its capacity to set and pursue its own agenda.
Your Excellencies, one of the fundamental pillars of reform is AU's financial autonomy. The over-reliance on external partners for funding compromises the organization's independence and ability to set its own agenda. The implementation of the Kigali decision on financing the Union must be expedited. A self-reliant African Union is not just a vision we have, it is an imperative to achieve. Your Excellencies, without peace, there can be no development.
The Nairobi meeting aims to outline a roadmap for accelerating significant reforms within the African Union, with President Mahama emphasizing the urgent need to implement the Kigali decision on financing the Union. Adopted in 2016, this decision proposed a 0.2% levy on eligible imports across member states to generate internal revenue and reduce reliance on foreign donors. If fully implemented, the levy could raise $1.2 billion annually, sufficient to cover the African Union's core budget and provide a steady, predictable funding source. However, progress has been sluggish, as some member states remain hesitant to enforce the levy due to economic concerns and political resistance. At the heart of the African Union's financial struggles lies a chronic lack of member state contributions. The African Union's budget, which funds its programs, peacekeeping missions, and operations, has long relied on external donors. Over the years, up to 60 to 70% of the African Union's funding has come from
I have to go back to that. That picture's crazy. What were they gonna hold their hands?
Long relied on external.
Look how like they look inseparable. Oh my gosh. All right.
Donors. Over the years, up to 60 to 70% of the African Union's funding has come from partners such as the European Union, the United States, and China. This reliance undermines the African Union's effectiveness in several ways. It often comes with conditions that constrain the organization's ability to pursue an Africa-focused agenda, is subject to the unpredictability of donor priorities and political shifts, and compromises the African Union's.
Basically, what the gentleman's saying is that it's uncertain because it's beholden to political shifts, just like we were talking about earlier in those news articles.
Independence, limiting its capacity to function as a truly sovereign and self-determined continental body. One striking example of Africa's external reliance is the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, which was gifted by China in 2012. While this $200 million facility symbolized China's friendship with Africa, it later became a source of controversy. In 2018, investigative reports revealed that the African Union headquarters servers had allegedly been compromised. French newspaper Le Monde reported that for 5 years, data from the African Union servers had been secretly transferred to China every night between midnight and 2 a.m. The allegations claimed that the building's ID systems were allegedly set up to enable Chinese intelligence to spy on African Union discussions. The report also claimed that sensitive information about Africa's peace, security, and development was potentially exposed. China denied these allegations, and the African Union publicly downplayed the reports. However, the incident highlighted the risks of foreign gifts with hidden costs. The African Union can achieve financial independence through a combination of strategic reforms and innovative funding mechanisms. First, member states must fully implement the Kigali decision, which introduces a 0.2% levy on eligible imports, generating predictable and sustainable revenue. Enforcing timely and full contributions from member states is also crucial, supported by penalties for non-compliance and incentives for adherence. Additionally, the African Union can establish a continental resource fund, where a small percentage of revenue from Africa's abundant natural resources is allocated to its operations. Engaging the private sector in development initiatives and creating diaspora bonds can further diversify funding sources. By institutionalizing transparency, accountability, and value for money frameworks, the African Union can maximize resources while reducing reliance on external donors and ensuring long-term financial autonomy. A significant portion of Africa's population, over 60%, is under the age of 25. Yet, as Mahama pointed out, the voices of youth and women are often absent in policymaking. He advocated for frameworks that empowered these groups to lead at all levels of governance, emphasizing that Africa's future hinges on their active participation. The Nairobi meeting, chaired by Kenyan President William Ruto, aimed to chart a roadmap for accelerating institutional reforms within the African Union. These reforms are envisioned to enhance the organization's efficiency, accountability, and sustainability.
I wouldn't believe anything this guy says.
Challenges.
I'd watch him with one eye shut and one eye.
In championing these initiatives,
open and one
Mahama envisions an African Union that is not only financially independent, but also more responsive to the needs of its people, a union capable of setting its own course and realizing the continent's vast potential. Your perspective matters. What do you make of Mahama advocating for African Union?
I'll answer that question. I believe it's the step in the right direction, and it absolutely needs to be at the forefront of changing Africa and making it more self-sustainable. I believe Ghana's president is genuine, and I believe he wants to, change Africa for the better. He's already done, has made diplomatic ties with Ibrahim Traore and the AES, and they are moving and changing things for the better, and they are pushing ahead for a self-reliant, self-independent Africa through critical infrastructure and economic development. All right, that's all I have for today. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day, and Shabbat Shalom. I am out.